The classroom buzzed with the low chatter of restless students as the teacher wrote a long math equation across the chalkboard. Dust floated in the afternoon sunlight streaming through the tall windows. "Who can solve this problem?" the teacher asked, turning back to the class with a piece of chalk still in her hand. From the middle row, Jaden Williams, a quiet but bright black boy of 12, slowly raised his hand. His heart beat fast, but he had worked on problems like this at home for weeks. Numbers and equations weren't just assignments for him, they were puzzles he loved to solve. The teacher arched an eyebrow, clearly surprised. "Jaden? All right then, let's hear it." Jaden stood, gripping his pencil tightly. He carefully explained his reasoning, step by step, his voice steady but soft. When he reached the answer, he looked at her with quiet pride. For a brief moment, silence filled the room. Then the teacher let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, Jaden," she said mockingly, shaking her head. "That might just be the silliest answer I've ever heard." The classroom erupted in laughter. Students pointed, some covering their mouths, others slapping their desks. Jaden's face flushed hot as he stared down at his shoes. He knew he was right, he had checked the solution twice in his head, but her laughter drowned out his confidence. The teacher waved her hand dismissively. "Sit down. Maybe next time, someone else can give us a real answer." Jaden sank back into his seat, his chest heavy, his eyes burning. His classmates were still chuckling, but all he could hear was her voice echoing in his mind, "The silliest answer I've ever heard." As the bell rang and the students rushed out into the hallway, Jaden stayed behind for a moment, gripping his notebook. He whispered to himself, barely audible, "I'll prove her wrong. One day. I'll prove them all wrong." That evening, Jaden sat at the small wooden desk in his bedroom. His math book lay open, pages filled with scribbled notes and half-erased equations. The laughter from the classroom still echoed in his mind, sharper than any insult he had ever heard. He pressed his pencil against the page so hard it nearly snapped. The door creaked open. His mother, Carla Williams, stepped inside. She was tired from a long day of work, but her eyes softened when she saw her son hunched over his books. "Jaden," she said gently, "you haven't even touched your dinner. What's wrong, baby?" Jaden hesitated, his throat tight. Finally, he whispered, "She laughed at me, Mom. In front of everyone. I gave the right answer, I know I did. But she said it was the stupidest thing she'd ever heard. And the whole class laughed." His mother's heart clenched. She knelt beside him, lifting his chin so his eyes met hers. There was no judgment in her gaze, only strength. "Listen to me, Jaden. Some people will laugh at what they don't understand. Some people will doubt you just because of who you are. But that doesn't mean they're right." Tears welled in his eyes. But it hurt so much. She smiled softly, brushing a tear from his cheek. "I know it does. But pain can be power, if you use it the right way. Don't let their laughter stop you. Let it drive you. Prove them wrong, not with anger, but with brilliance." Jaden sat silently for a moment, her words sinking in. Slowly, the shame in his chest gave way to a spark, small but burning. He wiped his eyes, sat up straighter, and turned back to his math book. Carla kissed the top of his head and whispered, "You are not just smart, Jaden. You're special. And one day, the whole world will see it." As she left the room, Jaden picked up his pencil again, determination in his eyes. Each equation he solved wasn't just practice anymore. It was a step toward something greater, a promise to himself. Weeks passed, but Jaden didn't forget the sting of that classroom laughter. Instead of shrinking, he began to spend more hours at his desk, working through problem after problem. His notebooks filled with equations, solutions, and pages of numbers that most kids his age would never attempt. At first, no one noticed. At school, Jaden stayed quiet, answering less in class. But after hours, he practiced relentlessly. He started solving advanced math puzzles online, competing under a simple username, J_Will12. Slowly, his name began climbing the leaderboards. One afternoon, his math teacher announced an upcoming school-wide competition. "It's a chance for our brightest students to represent us at the district level," she explained, scanning the room. Her eyes paused on Jaden, almost amused. "Of course, anyone may enter." A few kids snickered. Jaden felt the familiar heat of humiliation on his face, but this time, he didn't lower his head. He signed up without hesitation. The day of the competition, the library was hushed as students bent over their test sheets. Jaden's pencil flew across the paper, his focus absolute. While others hesitated, he moved quickly, checking each solution twice. By the time the bell rang, his paper was not only complete, it was flawless. When the results came in, the principal announced over the intercom, "Congratulations to Jaden Williams, our school's top math scorer. He will be representing us at the district competition." The classroom fell silent. A few students gasped. Even the teacher's eyes widened for a split second before she forced a thin smile. "Well," she muttered, "let's see how long that lasts." Jaden didn't argue. He didn't gloat. He simply packed his bag, his heart steady. These were just the first steps. Quiet victories, yes, but victories nonetheless. At home that night, he laid the certificate on the kitchen table. His mother hugged him tightly, whispering, "I told you, baby. The world will see it soon enough." Jaden smiled, determination burning brighter. He was no longer trying just to prove his teacher wrong. He was proving something much bigger, to himself, and to everyone watching. The district math competition was held in a large auditorium at a neighboring high school. Rows of desks stretched across the polished wooden floor, each seat filled with the best students from schools across the county. Nervous energy buzzed in the air, pencils tapping, pages rustling, whispers of formulas floating between kids before the contest began. Jaden walked in with his mother at his side. She squeezed his shoulder and whispered, "Remember, baby, you don't have to be the loudest in the room. Just let your brilliance speak for you." When the competition started, Jaden's mind locked into focus. The problems were harder this time: logic puzzles, geometry, algebraic proofs. Around him, students hesitated, erased, scribbled furiously. Jaden's pencil moved swiftly but carefully, his eyes narrowing with determination. 2 hours later, the judges collected the papers. The waiting period felt endless, but when the scores were finally announced, Jaden's name was called first. First place in the district competition, Jaden Williams. The auditorium erupted in applause. His mother jumped to her feet, clapping with tears in her eyes. Jaden walked to the stage, clutching his certificate, his heart pounding with pride. That night, the local newspaper ran a short article, "Local 12-year-old math prodigy advances to state finals." His classmates shared the link online. Some were shocked, others impressed. Even kids who had laughed at him began whispering about how smart he really was. At school the next morning, Jaden's teacher mentioned the article to the class. She smiled tightly, her voice laced with disbelief. "Well, I suppose even the unexpected can happen. Let's see how he manages at the state level." Her words stung, but Jaden didn't let them pierce him this time. He just looked down at his notebook and silently promised himself, "I'm not stopping here." By the end of the week, Jaden received the official letter. He had been selected to represent his state at the National Genius Award competition. It wasn't just about math anymore, it was about standing on the biggest stage of his life. And this time, he wasn't afraid. The news spread quickly through the school. Jaden Williams was going to represent the state at the National Genius Award. Some students congratulated him, others stared in disbelief. For Jaden, it felt like living in two worlds, one where strangers admired him, and another where his own teacher refused to see his worth. The morning after the announcement, Jaden's math teacher decided to test him in front of the class. She called him to the board with a smug smile. "Jaden," she said sweetly, "since you're now our little prodigy, why don't you show us how smart you really are?" She quickly scribbled a long, complicated equation across the chalkboard. The numbers stretched nearly from one end to the other. The class leaned forward, waiting. Some students grinned, anticipating his failure. Jaden picked up the chalk. His hands didn't shake this time. His mind clicked into gear, each step unfolding clearly in his head. While whispers filled the room, he worked silently, line after line of calculations flowing with precision. In less than 2 minutes, he set the chalk down and stepped back. The answer was correct. Perfectly correct. The room fell silent. Even the teacher froze, staring at the board. For a moment, her lips parted as though she would protest, but no words came. The class erupted into applause, loud, genuine applause. Students who had once laughed at him now cheered his name. Jaden turned, his eyes meeting the teacher's. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply walked back to his desk, the applause still ringing in his ears. His mother's words echoed in his mind, "Don't let their laughter stop you. Let it drive you." The teacher stood at the front of the room, speechless. For the first time, her authority looked fragile. And for the first time, Jaden knew she couldn't belittle him anymore. Because in just a few weeks, the whole nation would be watching, and there would be no denying him then. The auditorium in Washington, D.C. shimmered with lights. Banners hung from the ceiling, and cameras from major news networks lined the aisles. Rows of seats were filled with families, educators, and reporters from across the country. At the front, a long stage waited with desks, each one reserved for a finalist in the National Genius Award competition. Jaden walked onto the stage in a crisp suit, his mother and little sister waving proudly from the audience. His heart pounded, but his steps were steady. He wasn't just here to compete, he was here to prove that the laughter, the doubts, the dismissals had never defined him. The announcer's voice echoed across the hall. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome our finalists, the brightest young minds in the nation." Thunderous applause filled the room. Jaden sat down at his desk, the spotlight hot on his face. A panel of judges revealed the final challenge, a series of advanced logic and math problems, each harder than the last, projected onto a massive screen. The clock began. 30 minutes. Jaden bent over his paper, pencil moving quickly and confidently. Equations tumbled across the page. For a moment, the noise of the audience disappeared, there was only him, the numbers, and the quiet rhythm of thought. Other contestants scribbled, some erased frantically, some froze in confusion. Jaden stayed calm. When the final bell rang, he set down his pencil and exhaled slowly. He knew. He knew. The judges tallied the scores, the entire hall holding its breath. Then the announcer returned to the stage, envelope in hand. And the winner of the National Genius Award, with the highest score in the competition's history, is Jaden Williams. The auditorium erupted. People leapt to their feet, cheering, clapping, some even wiping away tears. Jaden rose from his seat, stunned but smiling as the spotlight followed him. On the front row, his mother cried openly, whispering, "That's my boy," while his classmates and teachers back home watched live broadcasts, their jaws dropping. Jaden accepted the golden trophy, holding it tightly in his hands. In that moment, the sting of laughter and humiliation from months before seemed like a distant echo. He wasn't the boy they laughed at anymore. He was the boy the nation now called a genius. The following week, Jaden returned to his school. The halls that once echoed with laughter at his expense now buzzed with pride. Students whispered his name as he passed. Some smiled, some clapped him on the back, others simply stared, realizing the boy they had once mocked was now a national champion. In the main office, a banner stretched across the wall, "Congratulations, Jaden Williams, National Genius Award winner." The principal shook his hand in front of the local news cameras, while reporters asked questions and snapped photos. But the moment that mattered most came later, in his math classroom. Jaden walked in, the golden trophy gleaming in his arms. His classmates erupted into cheers, clapping and calling his name. At the front of the room stood his teacher. The same woman who had once laughed at him now forced a smile, her cheeks red. She cleared her throat awkwardly. "Well, Jaden, I suppose we should all congratulate you. You've certainly surprised us." Jaden didn't gloat, didn't mock her the way she had mocked him. Instead, he placed the trophy on his desk, then turned to the class. His voice was calm but strong. "They laughed when I gave an answer. But sometimes, when people laugh, it doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you're ahead of what they understand. Don't ever let someone else's doubt define you." The room fell silent. His classmates hung on every word. Even his teacher lowered her eyes, unable to meet his. Jaden smiled slightly, his heart steady. This was his victory, not just the trophy, not just the applause, but the lesson that no cruelty, no prejudice, no laughter could erase his worth. From the back of the room, a student whispered, almost in awe, "He's a genius." And this time, instead of laughter, the classroom filled with respect.